welcome back to another episode of the Whiskey Diaries. My name is Matt Lenk, we're here in Devon, Texas, and today we're going to be talking about the Yamazaki 18-year-old. Now a little bit of history on Yamazaki. Yamazaki is basically the pioneer of Japanese whiskey. It's the first Japanese whiskey distillery that started in 1923 by Mr. Jingiro Tori. Now, Mr. Tori created Japanese whiskey after producing his own wine. He produced a sweet style of wine for like 8 years, and then after that he decided to create a Scottish style whiskey in Japan. Now, the Yamazaki is actually in the town of Yamazaki in Osaka, and basically there's 3 rivers that congregate there, and basically creates a really humid and temperate weather that is very famous around Japan for being super subtle. So he wanted to create a Scottish style whiskey in a Japan region, and he did so in around 1929. He released the Yamazaki White Label. Now that whiskey was very, very similar to Scottish whiskey, and at the time Japanese people were not ready for it and was not very popular. Now about 10 years later, he released the Kakubin whiskey, that is the first Yamazaki blended whiskey, and that was actually a success. The reason being because it was a lot softer, it was a blended style of whiskey, and it was a lot easier to drink, and that became basically the best-selling Japanese whiskey of all time, which still is, to be honest. I drink Kakubin like left, right, and center. Regardless of that, Yamazaki, or the single malt, the first single malt didn't get released till the 1980s. In the 1980s, they also created the Kekusha distillery and the Chita distillery, and they did. And Yamazaki was always the single malt was always a really good seller, but it didn't really hit massive popularity till 2015 when Jim Murray awarded the Yamazaki Sherry Cask from 2013 best whiskey in the world. Best single malt in the world. Now that obviously created a lot of curiosity, and at the time I remember when Japanese whiskey started to really become popular, a lot of people didn't really understand it. They didn't even think that it was real whiskey. It required a lot of education to the general customer for people to understand what Japanese whiskey is. To this point, as a matter of fact, this year 2021, Japanese is the first time that they're actually going to introduce regulations into Japan just to actually define what Japanese whiskey is. Because Japanese becomes so popular at the moment, there's a lot of Japanese whiskeys that are selling Japanese whiskey as Japanese whiskey, but they're actually Japanese whiskeys that are sourced from another parts of the world, bottled and aged in Japan, and then calling it Japanese whiskey. So all that is going to change, but regardless of that, in 2015, Yamazaki just went through the roof. Now, because of that, in 2014, they started looking at making something that is called a non-age statement. At the moment, the core range of Yamazaki, you got the non-age statement, the Distiller's Reserve, the 12-year-old, the 18-year-old, and the 25-year-old, which goes for ridiculous amount of money. Even the Yamazaki 18, I still remember 5-6 years ago, you can buy it for $120, $100 and something dollars. Now it goes for $900, $1,000. If you can find it, it just sells out straight away. It is actually delicious whiskey. I know that it's a mix between Sherry Cask and American Oak. I cannot remember how much on each barrel, but I know that it's they use a fair bit of Sherry Cask in it. So just to try the whiskey now, you can see the color compared to the 12-year-old as well. It's a lot darker. I'll just put it here as well. And yeah, this is a delicious, delicious whiskey. You can definitely smell the sherry in this. It's like the spicy nose, like dry fruits, like really cloves and cinnamon. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of tannics. It's quite chewy. It is really delicious whiskey. I'm not sure if it's worth $1,000 again. We did another video of whiskeys of 18-year-olds under $200. They are still as delicious as this one. But again, if people are paying for it, then obviously it's worth it. Absolutely stunning. Anyway guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time. Slanjaba.